What's up, guys? Welcome to our third episode of Discoveries. I'm your host, Brandon Gilly. Sadly, we cannot have Liam as our co-host today, but that's okay, because today is our first ever interviews for our first ever featured artist, the wonderful, beautiful, and talented Lindsey Sullivan. Welcome her to the meeting. How are you, Lindsey?
Hello, I'm doing great. Thank you.
It's really nice to see you. I know we've been talking over these past few weeks, but it's really nice to finally get to see you in person or on screen. It was such a blessing that I got to hear some of your music and your covers and your duet band in Sweet Kareen. And I've just been very inspired about listening to you and what you have to communicate to your audiences and the people and the stuff you communicate. It's all I love, like the deep talks that you give, and it really shows throughout your writing and your passion for journalism. And I just want to get to know more about you, more about the depths about you. I just want to start off with a question like, tell us about yourself. Like, what do you like to do? Any hobbies or passions that you like to do in your free time? And so, yeah, just go on in.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you again for having me. This is such an honor and a privilege, and it's so good to meet you. So the feelings are mutual. A little bit about me. I'm 22. I just graduated alongside you and Liam from Pepperdine University.
Go wait. Go wait.
I know, it's huge. It's like a huge relief to be done with that chapter. But I studied journalism, and that's what I got my bachelor's degree in. So that's a big, I guess, like hobby, just like interest of mine. I love reading the news. I love listening to podcasts, just reading in general. That's like a big part of my life. It consumes a big portion of my time, but I'm not the least bit sad about that. So that's a huge thing. Hobbies, though, I am a musician. It took me a while to kind of proclaim that over myself, like considering myself a musician, but I feel pretty comfortable saying that today. And so this is just so cool to get to talk about it and to share a little bit of that music on this platform. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm zooming in right now from Fredericksburg, Virginia, which is where my family lives. This is where I'm from. And yeah, this is where I'll be while I kind of figure out my next move.
Okay. Well, what do you aspire to be? What are your end goals, or what do you want to do when as a living or as a job in the future?
That is the golden question that I've been racking my brain. I feel like this past year I've just been like, what am I gonna do? Like, I feel like I have cultivated these skills, kind of very different skills. Like music is one, and then I really threw myself into journalism the past couple of years at Pepperdine, and we have a great journalism program. So that was like a huge privilege to be a part of that. So I don't really have like an end goal. I don't even really have like a career path in mind. I would love the ability someday, and I'm not saying I'll get this right off the bat, but to integrate like journalism with music. And you mentioned Sweet Kareen, and Cameron Davis is a huge part of the reason why I even like pursued music, outside of my bedroom alone. And we've talked about some ideas like starting a record label, starting like a music media company. Nothing is in the works right now, but just I have a lot of dreams. I don't know how I'm gonna get there, but
Okay.
Yeah, those are kind of like my visions. So we'll see how they come to fruition, but I know God has a plan, and that's kind of what I've been resting in this past year. I know there's this, I don't know if you felt this, Brandon, like as a senior, but I definitely felt this pressure to like have everything figured out before graduation. And it's kind of like when you graduate, you need to know like what your next move is. Like, even if it's not a job, you need to know like, what are you doing to work toward that job, or what are you doing with your life? And it's
Exactly.
like, well, my life isn't my own anyways, and I think it's easy to forget that. So I've just been like kind of living in that truth that God didn't bring me to Pepperdine and bring me this far just to be like, okay, it's like all your decision now. He's got a plan, so I'm waiting on him.
Amen. Amen. And just finding your inspirations in music and writing. How do you find that inspiration within just to try to carry on with like in your music life and try to balance that life between journalism and music, and how you would like to integrate that, the music side and the writing side together?
Mm, I love that question. I think music for me it's never felt like work, and mostly because it was something that I just did like alone in my room. It was like a form of relief, or like a way to like express myself. So it never felt like work. I never did choir. I didn't do any, I'm not trained, like I didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
So really, like when I actually got into music, like throughout college, it was like a huge shock to me. I was like, this feels so weird. I'm like performing, and that was something I was really not used to. So music is, at least right now, I don't know what is going to be down the road, but it doesn't feel like work. It kind of is that thing that's like, it's the way that I can express myself and like get all of this up here, because I can get very meta and like very overwhelmed with what I'm feeling and thinking. It's a way to just get that out. Whereas like journalism has always felt like work, and great work, and I'm passionate about it. I love it, but it's not something, I wouldn't like go write an article as like a form of relief. It's like, I do have that drive to do it, but that is work. So they take up two very different sides of my brain. So like I said, I don't know how those are going to integrate, and maybe they won't. Maybe music will kind of just stay like a hobby, but I would love to be able to have an income with money. I mean, with music. I don't know if that will happen, but we'll see. I'm excited.
Oh, hopefully, Lindsey. I'm definitely here. Like, I'll definitely be a connection on the entertainment industry if you need anything. But I really thought it was interesting. Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that you said that it balances both sides of your brain. Like the left and right hemisphere, because whenever I make decisions in life, like I'm a feeler, and I always think with like with my left side, and my creative side always dominates. And so sometimes it kind of makes me struggle with certain situations, like whether it be like simpler things like history class, or like math class, like analysis. I always struggled with like math and science, and it's never really been those type of fields for me. And so what type of advice would you give someone who's trying to pick their career path?
You're asking me? I need advice.
I just thought it would be a good question.
No, it is a good question. Finish your thought. I'm sorry.
That's the question. It's like, well, like both of us chose our own paths of what we're passionate about, and coming from a family who is very conservative and really wants, who stresses about taking care of the family and trying to make a good financial situation out of our living. It kind of puts the pressure on like oneself when we've come from a family where they stress about, try to do what you love, but also think about your family and how you could help them financially in the future, help yourself and your family. So it puts that pressure on people to find that career that they either love or they have to take, or else they could be in very different situations. So I just want to ask, like, what, from your personal experience, what made you pick journalism and music?
Mm. Okay, well, I will say this. I didn't really pick music because I never really like pursued that. It was kind of just something that like came my way.
Yeah.
So I will say that about music, but journalism, you know, we were talking earlier about storytelling, and that's really the heart of what journalism is. Yes, it's, you know, getting important information like traffic and weather and, you know, if there's a murder on the loose, like those are parts of journalism too.
Just a minor one, you know, just small stories like that. Yeah.
You know, like that's the cycle of news. And, you know, of course there's like investigative journalism. There's just so many different things. But the heart of journalism is storytelling. And I think that's why I wanted to pursue that is, you know, I was part of my newspaper in high school. I didn't really love it though, which I feel bad even like saying that, but like my heart wasn't really in it. I kind of just did it because I was like, oh, I'm a writer. So like, this is like the only outlet I have at my school to like do that.
Yeah.
But I chose to stick with it because of storytelling. And then I came to Pepperdine and it wasn't just like news writing. It was like, oh, you want to host a podcast? You can do that. Like you want to be the editor of this magazine? You can do that. Like,
it's like open opportunities from the start.
Yeah. It's just so crazy. I mean, I'm still to this day, like, I haven't processed like my time at college, but like, even just thinking about like, they put that in my hands. Like they really don't like watch over you or like pick at what you're doing. Like they just let you have the reins. And like, that is so special, you know, like that's an experience it's invaluable. So that's kind of my like journalism track. And I think that's what motivates me to like keep going is it's like this, like what we're doing right now. It's like so human and it sounds cliche, I know. But it's like connection, you know, like that's what everybody craves. That's what, you know, even my dad, like he's a pastor, but he also has a construction business. Like he wouldn't tell you that, like, you know, doing tax audits or like putting nails in a house like is what gets him up in the morning. Those are all parts of like running a business. But what motivates him is when he like seals the finish on that house and he shakes the owner's hand and he's like, hey, let me show you your new house. It's the people, you know, like, and I think if you look at most careers, most jobs, like that's really what people love. Now, of course, like there's things like music where you're doing this and it really is just you and that instrument or whatever you're creating, but then you want to go share it and you want other people to connect with what you've written. So, you know, I'm no like expert in careers or jobs or anything like that, but I really think that is the thing. And so I think like you asked me about advice and I can't say that I really have that, but I think if I were to give anyone advice, and I'm giving this to myself right now too, it's find out like who you are, and then you can connect with people in whatever you're doing. Like you could be a ditch digger, you know, but you're going to have like people that you see every day and like you'll have that connection. And, you know, to bring faith back into it, if you know who you are, then you know whose you are. And if that connection's good, like you and your creator, like the person who formed you, and not only like formed you and then just kind of dropped you off, but like wants like to know you and wants you to know him, like then it doesn't matter what you're doing every day. Like, yes, it does. And yes, he cares. But if you have that right, I think the other pieces won't matter as much because, of course, not every job we do, we're going to love. And not every part of every job we do, we're going to love, even if it's like our dream career. Every person who has their dream career will tell you there are parts of that job they do not like doing. No, I'm serious.
No, I relate.
So yeah, that's the only thing I can give, and that's, you know, that's not coming from someone who has a great career. That's just from someone who I know who I am in the Lord, And so that piece is never going to go away. That's like the foundation. So if you build from there, it'll all be well with you. That's kind of what I have to say.
That's a great answer, Lindsey. Thank you for that.
I was running on fumes at the end there. I was like, all right, Lindsey, you got to wrap this up.
No, I was like, go off, Lindsey. We want Lindsey going off on this. Speaking of faith, I know that you are, being a daughter of a pastor, you have such a strong faith, and
not always.
Not, at moments, we're all human. We can't always be. We always have our doubts at some points in life. But coming from someone who wants to be close to God and who is always looking to strengthening that relationship with Him, trusting Him with all our hearts. How would you describe how God and your faith has affected the way you lived your life and the way you look for opportunities and the way you show your passions and inspirations out to the world?
Yeah, in every way. Like, it's crazy. There's this concept in the Christian faith, but it's in other faiths too, of like being born again. And I think that is so integral to like the Christian faith, especially. Because the Bible says, Jesus said that unless you be born again, you cannot enter the kingdom. And that sounds kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
like
okay.
First,
yeah.
But really, to answer your question, like that's what I think of. It's like when you, put your life into the Lord's hands, you say, okay, come into my heart. Like, I'm going to live this thing for you. And this, like, it doesn't mean you get it all right. And it doesn't mean that there aren't times where you're like, where are you? Like, I mean,
you're always going to have questions. Yeah.
Multiple times a day. I'm like, where are you? Like, I do not hear your voice in this. I do not see your hand in this. Like, there's always that, like, kind of striving or like struggle, I guess. Tension. That's the word I'm looking for. Tension. What was I even talking about? Oh yeah, but being born again. So to answer your question, it affects everything. And like I said, there are times where I wander and, I am in a body, I'm flesh, I think about me. But then when I'm reminded of Him, I'm like, wait, this life that I live, like I gave to you. And so there are times when I wonder and, I get lost or whatever, but I always come back to that. And so in that way, it affects everything. Like there's nothing that He doesn't touch. And if there is something He's not touching, I'm like, can you please come touch this? Because like when you give your life to the Lord, like that already in itself is like a radical thing. So then when you start walking and you're living, and it could be like you're looking for a job or you're looking for love or like whatever it is, like why wouldn't you want like the person who created the universe to be a part of that? Like that just sound crazy when you actually like break it down like that. Like why wouldn't you want God to be a part of everything? And of course, there are things where we're like, actually, no, I don't want you coming in there because you're going to shake things up.
Do you believe in the everything happens for a reason quote?
I do. I don't think everything is from God's hands because, of course, evil doesn't come from Him. And that's a whole debate about what is good, what is evil. But I do think everything happens for a reason because everything's spiritual. And we live in the natural, so we can't really see the spiritual all the time. But I do believe that everything happens for a reason. Yes. Short answer for you.
Yeah. Because for me, I believe that, our Lord and Savior and our God, He likes to plant these people in our lives so that we can craft the way to Him, And I believe that's where I kind of go under the slogan of everything happens for a reason is because it's not the physical things, but it's the people that he puts us in connection with, like like the Zoom call right now.
Like
There's
this.
obviously a reason why we met, for some reason. I don't know, but God, I believe that God gave us the chance to meet each other, and I'm really blessed by that. And I just believe that in some ways the people that we meet are small blessings that God gives us, is because he's trying to um, you know the ultimate goal is for us to be reeled back into him, and
Yeah.
meet
Oh,
him,
I love the way you said that.
our own unique way of meeting the people that will help us find our true selves and our unification with God. And so
Mm.
that's where it kind of like hits me as a person. Oh my God, I'm getting emotional just talking about it. But yeah, along with Faith, I know you just got finished with Beauty from Ashes, your
Yeah.
2021 spring edition, and you talk about. I was really intrigued by, of course, like your little message at the beginning of the magazine, where you talked about how you were really passionate talking about how God one day will fulfill his promise and
Mm.
quoting you, salvaging the wreckage. And that was by far one of my favorite quotes. I know it was one it was just at the beginning, but Lindsey, it was my favorite quote throughout the whole magazine.
Oh,
So,
wow. That's so good.
and so I wanted to ask you what gave what pushed you to writing the theme of this awesome edition. By the way, everyone, come and read the 2021 spring edition of Currents magazine
Yes.
for Pepperdine University. It is a hit. You will hit all the emotions from it, guys. You guys will love it. Just come and take a look. I think it's in Lindsey's bio, in Lindsey's Instagram bio.
Yeah.
And so just come take a look at it. But yeah, what pushed you into creating this theme for the magazine?
Well, thank you for that. That means so much to hear, and thank you for that little plug too. So I talk a little bit about where the idea came from in that letter from the editor, but it really came from this very, very low place that I was in, to just speak frankly. I went through a season of questioning, which every season is a season of questioning, but it was like I couldn't silence the questions kind of season. And that's debilitating. I don't know if you've ever been in that place. I'm sure most people have. But this was kind of coming out of when things shut down last year in March. And I was like, whoa. It wasn't even that like I lost anything. Like, I was healthy, my family was healthy, my dad's business was doing fine. We didn't lose anything, I guess, tangibly. And so I felt even worse for feeling the way that I did, because I was like, Lindsey, like, look at the world and the state that it's in right now. You have no right to like feel this way. So I think then that like pushed, that like made me feel worse.
It's that guilt.
But I think it was a guilt trip, but I was already at such a low that like it didn't matter. Like nothing could bring me out. Like it like pushed me further into like this kind of, it was like a mental spiral, because it wasn't like anything was going on that was like actually harming me. It was all up here, and I think that's like the biggest battle. So it was 100% spiritual. And yeah, I think like I probably wasn't at a great place spiritually anyways, and then everything happened the way that it did, and I was like forced to reckon with that. So there was just this season of questioning. I was struggling in a lot of my family relationships at the time. There was just a lot of like pressure and stress, and I wasn't able to like handle it in a good way, and so it pushed me to that place. And so out of that was a long dissertation of negative. But out of that, I was like, okay, Lord, I need something I can like cling to because I feel like I have nothing. And I'm just like, and it felt like I was falling and falling. And when you felt that feeling of falling, you're like, okay, at least I'm gonna, hit the bottom and then that'll be it. I can brace myself at the bottom. I was like never hitting the bottom. I just kept falling and falling. And I was like, it was so unsettling. I was like, Lord, I need something to cling to. And so he gave me that verse, which is Isaiah 61. It's the whole chapter, but 61:3 is where he basically says, he's speaking to his people. This is in the Old Testament after, the Israelites had just suffered like calamity. And so way bigger devastation than I was experiencing. And so I was like, do I get to claim this Bible verse? But he was like, yes, my word is true. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. But he says, I will give you beauty for ashes, a garment of praise for your mourning. Like he's saying this crazy thing. He's saying everything that you see right now is not what it actually is. Like you see ashes and destruction and devastation, and I'm going to turn it into something beautiful. I'm going to bring life. I'm going to bring healing. And I was like, okay, like, and I just kept coming back to that verse. And then I was like, it came time, I was thinking about the magazine, and I was like, it's got to be that. Like I was like, there's nothing else. Because I was singing the same song every day. I was like, I've got to, like, not an actual song, but like, I was like, beauty from ashes. I was like, beauty from ashes. Like I wouldn't let anybody tell me anything different. I was like, no. The Lord promised. Like I was being very stubborn with it because I was like, I have to see this through. And so the magazine, in a very tangible way, to bring it back to that word, the Lord let me see it. He, because we don't always see his promises come to fruition, which that's horrible. I wish we all could. And I think, that's a huge part of living by faith, is like, you want to see your faith come to, be manifest. So in that way, in the magazine, I got to see that through other people's stories. And so that was just so powerful. And then, of course, when the magazine went up and I got emails and, calls and stuff, and people were like, thank you so much. Like I connected with this story, or like, there was this really hard hitting piece about mourning and like the mourning process and like losing a loved one. And I don't have like a lot of experience with that. So I entrusted that with one of my skilled writers, and she did an amazing job. But people were like, I lost my dad this many years ago, and this story really spoke to me, things like that. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like, thank you, Lord. I'm still like kind of experiencing the aftermath of that. Like the Lord let me see beauty from ashes in like this real way, so that was a very long answer to your question, but that is what like inspired it.
No, that's awesome. Yeah. Like, okay, one thing about that, it's, COVID has, of course, it pushed everyone to reevaluate things.
Yes.
And especially when you're alone, that's like the most critical time where people are like, okay, I need time with the Lord. I need time with God. And I need to go back to those roots of trying to find the wrong and trying to correct it. And I know that I have flaws, and I know that I'm not perfect, and I'm always gonna be going through this roller coaster of falls and ups. But it's to you, God, that really helps me get out of this hole and try to push things through. And it comes to that where COVID was a time for me where I had to reevaluate my relationships. It was, we were talking about this earlier, but for me, it was the way I treated people that kind of God opened up that realization for me, where, back in the past, I always struggled with keeping in contact with people, taking my moments. I wasn't cherishing the moments that I had with friends back at Malibu, back at Pepperdine, or back at home. And that kind of affected the whole situation for me for COVID. And I kind of spiraled into a small depression because
Mm.
the people that I knew from the past, it's like they were strangers to me, and
Mm.
they didn't see me the same way as they did in the past. And of course, people change as years come. Like we always change. We're not the same person as we were like last year or 2 years ago. But it took a lot of praying. It took a lot of Bible reading, and it took a lot of conversations with your friends, my friends and families, that helped me discover um, why ultimately I was struggling with this. And this ultimately led to a unification with my relationship with God, because I felt like I strengthened a bunch of relationships with my family, with my friends, and from distant people that I've talked to before. And I just believe that COVID led us to some type of reunification of each other, and that's where you said finding that finding the beauty from the ashes is finding that reunification, as in my experience, finding that reunification from the segregation, and
Mm.
I that really spoke to me, and I really thank you for that piece of work. But yeah, moving on, we only have a little bit of time left, so I kind of want to talk about your partnership with Cameron Davis and Sweet Korean, because I've been in a couple classes with Cameron Davis, and I've talked to her a little bit, but I've never heard about Sweet Korean and your guys' partnership. And when I first watched you guys perform, I was incredibly impressed.
Oh,
And
so sweet.
I became a fan. And so can you give a little details on how you guys kind of started that going, and how you found that inspiration to start a two-way duet, two-way band with Cameron Davis?
Yeah, well, on the topic of everything happens for a reason, Cameron was in my suite freshman year. And to be completely honest, like, I don't think if we had not met the way we did, I don't think we would have ever met, because different majors, like different accolades and like programs and stuff. So like
She was a music
that was,
freshman year.
yeah, she was. And, even then when she switched into media production, we would not have had really any overlap. So that was such a God thing. So she was in my suite. We got pretty close freshman year. And that's when I was like starting to kind of come out of my shell musically. I joined Celebration Chapel, which was such a great introduction for me, because you are in this environment with believers and it's a worship environment. So it's, it can be performance motivated. I'm not saying it can't be, but for the most part, we were all there to worship. And so that made me feel very comfortable. I was like, okay, well then I'll sing and play, because, we're worshiping. I'm not really like, I didn't think of it in the way that I knew, like, I didn't think he had like a bigger plan after that. I was like, oh, well, yeah, I'll worship, like 100%. That's so cool. But then it turned out that I was under such great leadership that year. I mean, we had our like directors were, I don't know if you know them, Ben Howard, Brandon, I cannot think of his name now. But he was in music too. I'm sorry.
Was he a senior, or was he an artist?
He was a junior at the time. He had another year. They were all juniors, I believe.
Was he Brandon Shaw?
No, he played like the French horn, I think. But he played like every instrument. I mean, he was just so talented. I feel so bad I can't think of his last name.
I don't know him, unfortunately.
But those two, and then Valerie Benoin, who, I don't know if you know her, she graduated last year. She's actually one of my really close friends now, but great like leadership and so talented. And so I show up like, the first day of rehearsal, and Val's like, okay, you're going to be doing harmonies for blah, 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 which is like, singing backup. And I go to her after rehearsal. I'm like, what's a harmony? Like, I knew nothing. Like, I'm not.
What's the harmony?
Like, I'm not kidding like, I knew the word, like, okay, that's harmonic. Like, I had heard that, but I was like, when you tell me to sing harmony, I'm like, so I'm just singing? Like, I didn't understand anything technical about music. Like, people laugh at me when I tell them that, but I'm not even kidding you. Like, the learning curve was huge. Like, I had so much to learn. And, I had played guitar since I was 8 years old. So I understood music a little bit, but to be honest, I mostly played by ear. Like, because I was singing in my bedroom every day. Like, I didn't have somebody like training me. I was just like, oh, this sounds good, I'll pick it, like, so that was my introduction. And then Cam was a huge part of that too, because she's just so talented and she's classically trained and also just an amazing friend and so patient. So luckily I had her to, kind of help me out a lot with harmony and those kind of things. And then we went abroad together. Our sophomore year, we were in Lausanne together. And there was a pretty big musical community there, actually. Taylor Matthews, Amanda Cooper, Lily Kukos. I don't know if you know any of them, but yeah, huge musical community, which that always helps because, you can even just sitting and like absorbing it. I was like learning so much. Mm-hmm. And then Cam and we just realized, like, I don't know, we might have been like practicing for house church, which it was all like student led. We were practicing for something and it was just us two. And like, we realized that our voices just mesh so well together. I don't know what it is, like maybe because she's a soprano and I'm an alto or like what it is, but
your guys' harmonies sound amazing whenever you guys sing together. I just want to say that.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
It's mostly credit to her. I mean, she's harmony girl. I'm like, I'll sing the melody. I could sing that. but I've learned a lot, and so we've been songwriting together for almost 2 years. The fall will be 2 years. And then we kind of put our name, we called ourselves Sweet Corrine because Kaylin Mendez, I don't know if you know him, but he started this thing with the graphic actually called Small Studio Sessions. And he asked us to come on. And so we were like, well, should we go with our names or should we like think of a band name? It's not a band, it's a duo, but so we called ourselves.
My bad.
No,
okay.
no, I wasn't.
I'm kidding.
Like, it's funny to me because I still call it a band, but it's like, it's really just me playing guitar and us singing. Like, there's no like there's no complexity to it. But yeah, I love singing with Cam. We've written probably on like close to 30 songs together now. And we've written really only 2 or 3 like in the same space. The other songs, it's like I'll start a song and she'll write a bridge or, vice versa. But that's kind of how that goes. And we were in the process of recording an album. I'm really talking about Sweet Corrine a lot now. I'm sorry, but I love talking about it.
Please, broadcast it.
But we were in the process of recording an album, but things, there were just a lot of technical things that didn't come through. So that is still very much like a thing that we're pursuing, but we're not exactly sure how that's going to come together. So. Okay.
Well, just by just me saying, I would love to have you two on Discoveries.
That'd be so good.
If you guys would like, it would be such a blessing to have you two on here. And just know that you guys are always welcome. Liam and I have open arms for you too. I know, unfortunately, we don't have time anymore, but it was really nice getting to know you, Lindsey. And
this was so good.
I really hope our paths cross again, and we get to talk again in the future. But it was really a blessing getting to know you, and you're an inspiration. You're a superstar, and I just want to thank you so much. And so this is Brandon Gilly, your host, Liam Nixon, your absent co-host. Thank you for watching our third episode and our first interview of our featured artist. And we'll see you next week on Wednesday. Thank you very much.